It's funny how people talk about that moment. Like it's supposed to be some slow motion, gut punch revelation, your world flipping over in one clear, tragic instant. But for me, it wasn't like that. It was the clink of a gold band hitting a glass coaster, the nod of a bartender who looked like he'd seen too much, and the laughter of two silhouettes behind a wall of wine bottles. No thunderclap. Just a decision. Quiet and terrifyingly calm. I'd been sitting at the far end of the bar for 17 minutes. Not drinking. Just watching. Pretending to scroll through my phone while my chest tried to collapse inward. She hadn't seen me. Not yet. She walked in like she owned the place. High heels, loud laugh. The kind of confidence that used to scare and attract me in equal measure. She was with him. Not a friend. Not a coworker. Him. The one I didn't want to believe existed. And I didn't follow her. I didn't tap her on the shoulder or demand answers or cause a scene in front of the host stand. I waited. Not for her, but for the bartender. When he finally looked my way, I slid the ring across the counter. Her wedding ring. She hadn't worn it in over a week. Said her finger felt tight. Said it must be the weather. Said a lot of things that sounded like small excuses piled on top of a much bigger one. Can you do something for me? I asked. He looked at the ring, then at me. Didn't say a word. Just gave that slow, exhausted nod like I was the fifth guy to do this tonight. When she comes back here with him, I said, just give her this. He picked up the ring and placed it on a cocktail napkin like it was something radioactive. You sure, man? No, not even a little bit. But I nodded anyway. Then I stood up, walked past the bathrooms, through the exit, and back out into a world that suddenly felt too loud and too quiet at the same time. The kind of cold that doesn't come from weather. The kind that comes when you realize you've been speaking a language for years that the other person never even bothered to learn. I didn't wait to see her reaction. But I imagined it 100 ways as I walked home, each version more humiliating than the last. Would she laugh? Would she be shocked? Would she look at him first to see if he was uncomfortable? Back at the apartment, I stared at the space on the counter where her ring dish used to be. I had thrown it in the trash that morning. Not in anger. In quiet preparation. She still hasn't come home. But she texted. And when I opened it, I swear my legs almost gave out. Not because of what she wrote, but because of what she attached. And that, unfortunately, is where this nightmare really begins. I don't know how long I stood there staring at my phone. The screen was still lit, the message still open, and for the first time in my life, I felt completely outside of my own body. It wasn't the words that hit me. It was the image she sent along with them. That one image made everything real in a way no confrontation ever could. It took the oxygen out of the room. The message itself was short, 7 words, no punctuation, no explanation. Just, you didn't have to be so dramatic. And then, right below it, a blurry photo. It was her hand, holding the ring, still sitting at the bar. A cocktail in front of her, and that man, his elbow visible in the corner of the frame. He hadn't even moved. He was still sitting next to her when she received the ring from the bartender. She didn't leave. She didn't come home. She stayed. I stared at the image so long that my phone screen dimmed and locked. I didn't unlock it again for almost an hour. I just sat at the edge of the bed like a man who'd fallen through a trapdoor and landed in someone else's story. Because surely this couldn't be my life. Surely she couldn't be the woman in that photo. The one smirking. The one whose wedding ring had turned into a prop in her little evening drama. She had always been theatrical, but this was something else. This was performance art at my expense. Around midnight, I finally got up and grabbed a notebook from the kitchen drawer. Not for any poetic reason, just because I didn't know what else to do. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't think straight. So I started writing things down. Questions. All the tiny questions that had haunted me for weeks, now screaming in bold ink across the page. Why didn't she come home after the conference last Thursday? Why did she suddenly care about her appearance again only when I wasn't around? Why did her new passcode stop working on our shared iPad? Why did her friends start texting me less and less? Why, when I handed her the ring that night, did it feel like I was finally telling the truth out loud? The truth is, I think I've known for a while. I just didn't want to know. I didn't want to accept that I was just background noise in her life. The guy who paid the bills and folded her sweaters and laughed at her sarcastic comments. I think she stopped seeing me years ago, but I only just stopped lying to myself about it. At 2:13 a.m., my phone buzzed again. It was her. Another message. This one said, I'll stay at Madeline's tonight. We can talk tomorrow when you're more calm. More calm? I hadn't even spoken. I hadn't texted back. I hadn't called. She was the one who stayed out with another man and received her wedding ring from a stranger behind the bar, and I was the one who needed to be more calm? I didn't respond. Not because I was being strong, but because I didn't trust myself to say something I wouldn't regret. And because some part of me hoped she'd come home and realize what she'd done. Maybe she'd cry, apologize, beg. That's what happens in the stories, right? But she didn't come home. She never even tried to call. And when I checked her location the next morning, yes, I still had access. I saw she wasn't at Madeline's apartment at all. Not even close. She was at a hotel. With him. The same hotel we stayed at for our 3rd anniversary. That's when something inside me finally snapped. But not in the way people expect. I didn't yell. I didn't break things. I didn't storm over there. No. I booked a room of my own. And the plan I made that day, well, it wasn't revenge. Not exactly. It was something quieter. Something she never saw coming. The front desk attendant didn't ask questions. He didn't even look up at me for more than 2 seconds. Just clicked through the screen, handed me a key card, and offered the obligatory, enjoy your stay. I nodded, barely hearing him. The manila envelope tucked under my arm felt heavier than it should have. Not because of the weight, but because of what it meant. What it proved. I wasn't here to spy. I wasn't here to catch her in the act. I already knew. What I needed now was something more concrete, something undeniable. The room I'd booked was 2 floors above hers. I knew that because I saw the reservation under her name when I checked the shared email we still had. She must have forgotten it was synced to my phone. That little oversight was all it took. Reservation confirmation. Room number. 2 nights. King Suite. No business conference. No Madeline. Just her name and his, Eli Benson, listed under additional guest. I didn't even know his last name until then. I sat on the bed, staring at the patterns in the carpet, until the sun shifted through the blinds and everything started to glow a pale gold. For a brief second, I remembered the last time we stayed in a hotel together. It was for a wedding. She wore that green dress that made her laugh when she twirled. We danced until midnight. She cried during the ceremony and said she was so lucky to have someone like me. I believed her. God, I believed her. I pulled out the contents of the envelope and spread them across the bed. Printouts, screenshots, emails, a few grainy photos from a private investigator I'd hired 2 weeks ago after a conversation with her sister left me feeling sick to my stomach. She'd slipped up and said something about Cora's new friend from spin class who had such nice shoulders. I didn't press her, but I remembered it. Eli teaches spin. I looked him up, found his Instagram, then his LinkedIn. Then, stupidly, I made an anonymous burner account and started watching. The more I watched, the more I saw. So I hired a PI. The photos showed them leaving restaurants together, walking to her car, touching. Nothing obscene. Nothing legally damning. But emotionally devastating. And the emails, God, the emails, those were worse. She had created a separate Gmail account. She used it to talk to him, to plan, to flirt, to lie. She said things like, he'll be at work all day Friday. Come over at noon, and can't wait to escape this beige life. Beige life. That's what she called me. That's what she called us. I gathered everything and slid it back into the envelope. I wasn't going to confront her. Not directly. Not yet. That wasn't the point of this. I wanted her to find it. So I left the room, walked down 2 flights of stairs, and paused in the hallway outside her door. Room 517. I don't know why, but I listened first. Heard nothing. Silence. Maybe they were asleep. Or maybe they had already left for brunch. I didn't care. I knelt, slid the envelope under the door, and walked away. Just like that. I don't know what she did when she found it. I didn't stick around to hear the fallout. But what I do know is that 24 minutes later, my phone rang. Her name lit up the screen, and my whole body tensed. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity is a wicked thing. So I picked up. Said nothing. Just listened. She was crying. Hard. Not the dramatic kind. Not the fake kind. The gasping, uncontrollable sobbing that sounded like it came from her gut. And all she said was, "Why did you do this?" That's what broke me. Not the cheating. Not the lies. Not the ring in the bar. It was the fact that she saw my quiet act of dignity as some kind of cruelty. I was the one who did something wrong now. I didn't answer her. I hung up. But I wasn't finished. There was one more place I had to go. One more truth that needed facing. Because Eli? He wasn't just some random guy from spin class. He was someone I knew. And the moment I showed up at his door, he wasn't smiling anymore. I wish I could say I didn't have expectations, but I did. I rehearsed everything in my head on the way there. The kind of cutting lines I'd never say out loud. The cinematic confrontation that ends with the other guy looking humiliated, maybe even begging for forgiveness, even though it wasn't mine to give. But none of that happened. None of it ever does. Reality doesn't play by your script. Reality walks into your life wearing your shirt and sipping your wife's favorite coffee like he belongs in both. Eli lived downtown, in one of those too expensive buildings with keycard access and a concierge who pretends he doesn't notice anything. I got in because I followed a delivery guy through the door. I was shaking when I hit the elevator button. I wasn't even sure what I'd say when I got there. All I knew was that I had to see him. Had to see the man who'd been undoing my marriage one workout class at a time. The door opened after the second knock. No hesitation. No paranoia. He looked surprised to see me, sure, but not guilty. That was the worst part. He looked mildly amused. Like I was a minor inconvenience in an otherwise pleasant day. "Waylon," he said, casually, like we were old college buddies running into each other at a gas station. He knew my name. That made my mouth go dry. And then I saw it. What he was wearing. A navy Henley, soft and worn, the kind I used to leave in the laundry basket after work. I only owned 2 of them, and this one had the slightly frayed collar that Cora always said she liked. And suddenly I realized she must have brought it. Packed it in that bag she said was just extra stuff for the gala weekend. She brought my shirt to his place. I didn't speak. I couldn't. I just stared at him. He leaned against the doorframe. "I figured you'd show up eventually." That line. I figured you'd show up eventually. That smug, indifferent way of acknowledging my pain like it was part of the background noise in his life. That told me everything I needed to know. I could have punched him. Could have shoved past him and yelled, demanded answers, ranted about betrayal and vows and all the broken pieces of my life that he didn't even flinch at. But instead, I did what I had come to do. I reached into my jacket pocket, pulled out a flash drive, and held it up. "This is everything," I said. My voice cracked a little, which I hated. "Every text, every email, every photo. I've got backups. It's going to HR. Your Jim's PR department. Her jobs board. Everyone who matters. I'm not asking you for anything. Just know, I'm not keeping this quiet anymore." He didn't reach for the drive. Didn't even blink. "I figured you'd go that route," he said, then sighed. "You know she told me you were fragile, right? Said you'd never actually fight back. That you'd cry, maybe disappear for a few weeks. Said she'd handle it." That word. Fragile. That's what she called me. Not kind. Not loyal. Not decent. Fragile. I put the flash drive on his little hallway table and stepped back. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, but from restraint. Every nerve in my body wanted to scream. But something held me together. Something calm and quiet and deadly honest. "I'm not fragile," I said. "I'm done." And I left. On the way back to my car, I felt something strange. Not relief, not justice, not peace. It was something heavier. Like grief. Like walking away from a house that burned down and realizing there's no point in rebuilding on the same ground. But I wasn't going home. Not yet. There was one more stop I had to make before this chapter could close. Her parents. Because what they told me that night changed everything I thought I knew about my wife and shattered the idea that this betrayal started recently. I didn't tell her I was coming. I just drove. It was almost automatic. The way my hands turned the wheel, the way my eyes stared straight ahead like the road itself was the only thing that hadn't lied to me. I hadn't been to Cora's parents' place in over a year. Not since her dad's back surgery. We used to go monthly, Sunday lunches, her mom's overly sweet tea, the way they bickered over how much butter was in the mashed potatoes. And I thought they liked me. I think they did. But there was always something in her mother's eyes when she looked at me. Not disdain, more like pity. A quiet, "you'll figure it out eventually," that I ignored because I was too proud or too stupid to ask what she really meant. When I knocked on the door, her mom opened it like she was expecting someone else. The moment her eyes met mine, the mood changed. Her face didn't crumple in surprise. It softened, like she already knew. Like something in the air had already told her the storm had broken. She stepped aside without a word. "Let me in." No questions. I sat in the same living room where I'd helped decorate their Christmas tree 3 years in a row. Same couch where Cora once curled up with her legs in my lap, flipping through photos of her childhood. It felt wrong now. All of it. Like I was trespassing in a life I no longer belonged to. Her mother came back with 2 things, a folded quilt I recognized from our wedding registry, and a cardboard box sealed with packing tape. She placed the quilt next to me and the box on the coffee table. "She didn't want you to have this," she said. Her voice was quiet but certain, but I kept it, just in case. I stared at the box. No label, no markings, just a brown square full of silence and secrets. My fingers trembled a little as I peeled the tape. Inside were fragments of someone I didn't know. There were old notebooks, diaries, high school photos, a flash drive, printed out emails that looked like they came from an old Yahoo account. A man's name, Levi, came up again and again. Letters Cora had written but never sent. Apologies she never delivered. Confessions that weren't mine to read but now sat in my lap like poisoned fruit. One page stood out. It was dated 2 years before we met. "If I ever settle, it'll be for safety, not love." I don't think I even believe in that anymore. But I'll smile. I'll play the part. And maybe you won't look too hard at who I used to be. I felt sick. This wasn't a betrayal that started in a bar. It was a lie that began before our first date. Her mother was watching me carefully. "I told her," she said, "when she brought you home for dinner, I told her, don't do this if you can't be kind to him. She said you were sweet, that you'd never leave her." I asked her if she loved you. She said, "I don't need to." I didn't cry. I wish I had. I think she expected me to. But the tears didn't come. What came instead was a kind of cold clarity I hadn't felt before. Like ice forming inside my chest, pushing everything else out. I stood up, still holding one of the letters. "Why didn't you warn me?" I asked. She shook her head. "Would you have listened?" I didn't answer. Because she was right. I wouldn't have. I would have called it jealousy or misjudgment or meddling. I would have said love is complicated and messy, and Cora's past didn't matter if she chose me. But now I saw the truth. I wasn't chosen. I was tolerated. I was a placeholder in a life that never really had room for me. I left the box in the backseat of my car and drove to the lake. Sat in the dark. Just me, the moonlight, and the sound of paper crumpling as I reread every word she wrote to other men, every line that told me she never really believed in us. But something still didn't add up. One of the letters mentioned a name I hadn't heard in years. Someone from my past. And what I found when I reached out to him unraveled the final layer of this betrayal. Because Cora didn't just lie to me. She lied to both of us. I sat in the driver's seat for almost an hour before I could bring myself to dial his number. I hadn't spoken to Oliver in years. Not because anything happened between us, just life, distance, marriages, distractions. He and I were inseparable once, the kind of friends who finished each other's sentences, crashed on each other's couches, shared stories we wouldn't dare tell anyone else. He was there for me after my dad died. I was his best man. And then we just drifted, the way people do when they think they have forever to reconnect. But his name was on one of Cora's letters, written in cursive with a little heart above the I in his name, like some kind of teenage nostalgia. The sentence that stood out was burned into my memory. It was always Oliver. And if he hadn't left, I would have never settled. I stared at those words so long they blurred. I thought maybe it was a different Oliver. Maybe she just knew someone by that name. The universe wouldn't be cruel enough to make it my Oliver, right? But the email attached to that letter said otherwise. His old address. A photo she saved from years ago. A photo I took, actually, of the two of them at my birthday party. She kept it. She saved it in a folder titled Almost. So I called him. And when he picked up, I didn't even say hello. I just said, "Did you ever sleep with her?" There was silence. The kind that weighs 1,000 pounds. And then, finally, his voice, quiet, almost ashamed. "Yes." One word. That's all it took. I felt my stomach turn. "When?" I asked. My voice cracked. He hesitated. "Before you were married. But after you started dating." She told me it was nothing serious. That you were just a rebound. I didn't know, Waylon. I swear. I thought you'd moved on from her already. My hands gripped the wheel so tight I thought I'd snap it. "Why didn't you tell me?" I whispered. "She made me promise," he said. "She said you'd leave her if you found out." She cried. She said she needed someone stable. She said she finally wanted to grow up. I felt like I was going to vomit. She had played both of us, and neither of us ever even questioned it. I was her backup plan, her emotional life raft. And Oliver? He was the one she wanted, but couldn't convince to stay. I hung up the phone without another word. And I drove. I didn't even know where at first. I just needed the wind to hit my face, to scream through my windows, to remind me I was still alive. Somewhere along the way, I realized I was heading back to the bar. That bar. The one where it all began. I parked outside. The bartender was different this time. Younger. Oblivious. But the room was the same. I took the same stool. Ordered nothing. Just sat there. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the ring again. I'd taken it back from the floorboard of my car days ago. I don't even know why. Maybe part of me thought it deserved to be thrown into a lake. Maybe it just felt wrong to let her keep it. But there I was again, sitting with that same gold band, that same aching silence. A couple near me was laughing. She touched his knee. He whispered something in her ear, and she blushed. It hit me harder than anything else. That used to be us. Or at least I thought it was. I pulled out a pen from the bar's receipt holder and flipped over a napkin. I didn't write a speech. I didn't write a threat. I wrote 4 words. I knew. I watched. And I placed the ring on top of it. Then I got up, walked outside, left it all behind. Except she found it again. And this time, she didn't stay silent. Because the next morning, I woke up to her outside my door. Crying, screaming, begging. Not for forgiveness, but for protection. Because someone else had found out. And this time, it wasn't just about heartbreak. It was about something that could ruin her life completely. At first, I didn't recognize the knocking. It was frantic, off rhythm, more like pounding than anything else. I was in the kitchen, trying to convince myself to eat toast I didn't want, still wearing yesterday's clothes, still pretending I didn't hear the silence in the apartment like a scream under a pillow. I walked toward the door slowly, half expecting it to be a delivery driver or someone selling magazines. But when I looked through the peephole, I felt my chest seize. It was Cora. Her hair was disheveled. She was wearing a sweatshirt that wasn't hers and clutching her phone like it was a lifeline. Her face, red, tear-streaked, wild with panic, wasn't the face of someone in love. It was the face of someone cornered. And suddenly I understood. She wasn't here for me. She was here for herself. I opened the door slowly. She didn't ask to come in. She pushed past me like she still owned the air in my lungs and the space in my hallway. I stood there in silence as she collapsed onto the couch, pulling her knees into her chest like a scared child. This was not the woman who laughed in bars or wrote love letters to men with names she thought I'd never learn. This was someone unraveling. What happened? I asked, still standing. She looked up at me, her eyes bloodshot. It's all out. Someone posted the emails. The photos. Everything. They tagged my boss. My clients. My mom. My heart dropped. What do you mean posted? She shoved her phone toward me. And there it was. A Twitter thread, already gaining traction. Screenshots from her fake Gmail. Surveillance stills from the PI hired. Even one blurry photo of her and Eli entering the hotel, time-stamped and labeled. The username was anonymous, the bio empty, but the damage was nuclear. Comments were already flooding in, disbelief, mockery, pity. And then, one phrase that caught my eye. This woman built her brand on integrity. Funny how masks slip. I sat down across from her. I didn't post it, I said, before she could ask. I sent everything to HR and her gym, like I said. But I didn't put it online. Her voice was barely a whisper. Then who did? I didn't know. Not yet. But the truth had a momentum now, and it was moving fast. Someone else had access. Someone else had a motive. She wiped her face and stared at the floor. They're pulling my contract. I've already lost 3 clients. My name's trending, and not in the good way. Is that why you're here? I asked. Damage control? She didn't answer, which was all the answer I needed. I got up, walked into the kitchen. I needed to breathe. Needed to get away from her perfume that still smelled like deceit. When I came back, she was holding one of the letters from the box her mother gave me. I'd left it on the table, too exhausted to hide it the night before. You went to my parents? She asked, eyes narrowing. I went to your mother. I corrected. She gave me the box. The one you said didn't exist. She looked like she was about to say something, then stopped. Instead, she folded the letter neatly and placed it back on the table like it was ticking. I never wanted to hurt you, Waylon, she said. I laughed. I couldn't help it. It wasn't a bitter laugh. It was hollow. The kind that comes from someone who's already bled out. You didn't hurt me, Cora. You dismantled me, bit by bit. With every lie, every half-truth, every night you looked me in the eyes and told me I was enough. She stood up, arms wrapped around herself. You think this is easy for me? I've lost everything. My job, my reputation, my life. People are calling me a fraud. They're sending messages to my clients. Eli blocked me. And now someone, is out there dragging me through the dirt, and I don't even know who. I watched her unravel, and for the first time, I felt nothing. No anger. No satisfaction. Just a dull kind of clarity. You kept your secrets in too many places, I said. Eventually, someone was going to find one. She stared at me. You think this is what I deserve? I paused, then nodded. Yes. She didn't cry again. She just stood there, shaking slightly, lips tight. And then, almost as an afterthought, she said, it was Oliver. That name again. What about him? She blinked. He's the one who posted it. I'm sure of it. He said if I didn't tell you the truth, he would. I didn't believe her. Not immediately. But she looked so sure. And Oliver had sounded broken on the phone. Betrayed. Maybe I wasn't the only one she'd underestimated. She left that afternoon. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't ask me to stop her. And I didn't. But a few hours later, I got a message. From Oliver. It said, we need to talk. Now. It's not just about her. And what he told me next was something I never expected. Because Cora's betrayal was only the beginning. Oliver met me at a diner on the edge of town. The kind with vinyl booths, fluorescent lights, and the smell of burnt coffee clinging to every surface. It was nearly empty. Just a waitress restocking ketchup bottles and a couple in the corner arguing over something trivial. He was already there when I walked in, sitting by the window, hands wrapped tight around a cup of tea he clearly wasn't drinking. He looked older than I remembered. Not just in the lines on his face or the gray in his stubble, but in his eyes. Like he'd carried something too heavy for too long. I slid into the booth across from him and waited. He didn't waste time. It was me, he said. I posted the emails. The pictures. Everything. I nodded. Cora told me. He sighed. I didn't do it to hurt you. I did it because I owed you. More than I ever realized. He pulled out his phone, opened a folder, and turned the screen toward me. More photos. But not of Cora. Not of me. It was him, and a woman I didn't recognize at first. Her face was blurred in the background of our wedding photos. A co-worker of Cora's. Emily. She told me things, Oliver said. After Cora and I stopped, whatever it was. Emily said Cora had a plan. That she was never going to tell you. That she used people like strategies. I didn't believe her. Not then. But over time, I started noticing patterns. Same stories. Same damage. Different men. He hesitated. I reached out to you that night because I knew it was all happening again. And when you asked me if I'd slept with her, I lied. Not about that, but about why I never said anything. I didn't speak. I let him unravel the weight. I was scared, he admitted. Of hurting you. Of losing you. You were my best friend. Still are, if you can believe that. But when I saw what she was doing to you, I couldn't stay silent. I couldn't let her rewrite history. I looked at him. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like I was crumbling. I felt grounded. Steady. I'm not mad, I said. I should be. Maybe. But I'm not. He blinked. You're not. No, I said. Because you told the truth. You stepped in when I was too blind to see it. You gave me the ending I never had the courage to create for myself. We sat there for a long time, just breathing, letting the silence say what words couldn't. And then, slowly, we started talking again. Really talking. About our childhoods, our old jobs, the things we thought we'd do by now and hadn't. The waitress refilled our drinks 3 times. When I finally left the diner, something inside me had shifted. The grief was still there, but it no longer defined me. The betrayal was still real, but it no longer owned me. I had lost a wife, but I had regained a friend. And more than that, I had found something deeper. Clarity. A few weeks later, I moved out of the apartment we'd shared. Packed up the photos, the dishes, even the worn navy Henley she gave away like it meant nothing. I donated most of it. Kept only what mattered. Started fresh. I got a new job, smaller company, better hours. I started going to the gym. Not out of revenge. Not to prove anything. Just because I wanted to feel stronger in my own skin again. I took a solo trip to Oregon. Sat by the coast and listened to the waves until my chest didn't feel so tight. And then, one day, I got a message from someone unexpected. Emily. The woman from the pictures. The co-worker. The one who tried to warn Oliver before it all fell apart. She said, I'm sorry for what you went through. I always thought you deserved better. Maybe this is weird, but if you ever want to talk, I'd like to get coffee. I read that message about 20 times. And then I said yes. We met. We talked. And for the first time in a long time, I laughed without bitterness. I felt seen. Not as a placeholder. Not as someone safe. but as someone real, someone healing. I don't know what comes next. I'm not trying to rush into anything, but I know this. I'm no longer stuck in the shadows of someone else's lies. I've stepped into my own story now, and for the first time in years, it's finally honest. The ring is gone, but I am still here, whole, and moving forward.